One day, my husband approached me and inquired, "Hey, how much money do we have in that safe?" I couldn't help but chuckle and replied, probably around $500,000 in total. Now, the following day, upon returning home, I discovered a signed divorce paper on the living room table. Both my husband and the vault were gone. My name is Helen, a 58-year-old working housewife who still puts in diligent effort at my job. You see, my hobby is saving money. Ever since my childhood, my mother opened a savings account for me, teaching me that depositing money in the bank would make the numbers in my passbook grow. I found it incredibly enjoyable to witness this growth. Starting with just $1, I would deposit a little bit at a time, relishing the experience of watching it accumulate. As my savings grew over the years, earning a few cents in interest annually became a delightful surprise to my younger self. With a fondness for money and understanding how it works, I pursued a career as a financial planner, offering advice on asset management. One day, a college friend approached me concerned about an old childhood friend who was in serious trouble due to debt. They asked if I could offer some advice, and intrigued, I agreed to meet with him. This friend, named Mark, was a handsome man with a refreshing smile. He shared his story, confessing his love for gambling and the struggles he faced in making ends meet. Feeling sympathetic, I offered Mark some guidance. Given his precarious financial situation, I advised him to consolidate his debts and reduce his monthly payments to better manage his life. As my friend had asked for my help, I willingly lent a hand. Looking back now, I realized that perhaps I had developed a slight crush on Mark during our interactions. Little did I know that this would lead to a series of troublesome events. Against the advice of my friend, Mark and I decided to get married, believing that our union would help us face his debts together. Due to my stable income and financial expertise, most of Mark's income went towards paying off his debt. I made sure he severed ties with his parents to prevent the debt from escalating. Additionally, I provided Mark with a monthly allowance of $500. However, when Mark decided to cut ties with his parents, they responded with anger and resentment. His mother labeled him an ungrateful child, regretting ever giving birth to him. His father too expressed his discontent, desiring to confront me for what he considered thieving behavior. It was clear that they believed Mark belonged to them as a means to repay their debts. Exhausted from dealing with his parents' debt for so long, Mark finally stood up for himself, declaring he was not their ATM. He returned to me, feeling relieved to be free from their constant reminders of the financial burden. Soon after, we welcomed a son, Kevin, who bore a striking resemblance to Mark. Kevin became my pride and joy, but unfortunately, he inherited his father's lack of discipline and indecisiveness. Just as our son noticed Mark's carefree character, he also observed the never-ending cycle of borrowing money from predatory lenders, dealing with loan sharks, and tricking friends into lending him money for gambling. Our journey was not without its challenges, but I managed to keep Mark on track. Over the span of 23 years, we gradually reduced Mark's debt to around $10,000, nearing full repayment. One day, while on the verge of achieving our financial goal, Mark received a call from his parents. They informed him that his father had collapsed and was at the hospital. Concerned, Mark left work early to be by his parents' side. He messaged me, apologizing for breaking our promise and explaining the situation. I encouraged him to go and comfort his parents, assuring him it was all right. As Mark continued visiting his parents at the hospital, I provided him with a little extra money for the hospital fees they couldn't afford. It seemed my in-laws were struggling financially and relying on Mark for support. Although he withdrew a significant amount from our joint funds each visit, around $1,000 to $2,000 per month, I chose to let it slide, understanding their need for assistance. A year had passed since my father-in-law's collapse, and both my in-laws had aged significantly. They sought someone to lean on, and I suppose they found comfort in Mark's presence. Meanwhile, I continued my hobby of saving money. One day, I retrieved my bank book from the vault and smiled. Mark, who usually showed no interest in my financial endeavors, looked at me and asked, "Hey, How much money do we have in that bank account you always look at so happily? I casually replied. It's about $500,000 now. However, the next morning, I discovered divorce papers completed and left in the living room. Both Mark and the safe were gone. As I sat there having breakfast, I couldn't help but smile. I knew Mark had his eyes on the money in the vault, and he had planned to take it all. Imagining him attempting to carry the entire vault nearly made me burst out laughing. In our home, we had a black cat named Luna. We had installed a pet camera to watch Luna's adorable antics, which served as healing moments throughout my day. Luna provided a sense of comfort amid the unexpected turn of events. While watching the pet camera during my lunch breaks, I was always greeted by the adorable sight of my child. But one day, as I switched on the camera, something unexpected unfolded in our living room. My in-laws and my husband Mark engaged in an unbelievable conversation. "Oh, you live in such a nice house, Mark. Your good salary makes your mother so proud," they flattered him. Mark's father responded proudly, "Indeed, I make a decent salary myself. However, Helen takes it all, and I'm left with a mere allowance of $500 a month." "Are you kidding me? That's outrageous. You should be getting more," they exclaimed, sympathizing with Mark. "Why do you obey such a tyrant like Helen? You could live a much better life on your own," they continued. "Mark, you're our pride. You could have saved hundreds of thousands by now. But she's exploiting you? Poor thing." They manipulated him. Listening to their conversation, I wondered if they had completely forgotten that I had worked hard to pay off Mark's debts. I pondered what was going on in their heads. In the past, it was Mark burdened with debt from his parents, and I had to provide them with cash every month, making it challenging for us to get by. "Did you know she has a bank book with tons of savings? It's not fair that you only get $500. Mark complained, and in that moment, my in-laws' eyes lit up. They exchanged glances and eagerly leaned in, awaiting Mark's response. Last I heard, I think it was around $400,000 or $500,000, Mark answered. "Mark, isn't that money rightfully yours?" they asked, trying to persuade him. "It may not match the effort you've put in, but shouldn't you be receiving that money?" "Yeah, I guess you're right. I'm starting to think the same thing," Mark conceded. Despite his good looks, Mark was easily influenced and indecisive. In the past, I found this endearing and wholeheartedly devoted myself to him. However, it seemed he was being manipulated by his parents once again, and they were about to touch my precious savings. Witnessing this scene was incredibly painful. Tears streamed down my face as I sat at my desk at work, holding my phone. For the past 23 years, I had diligently set aside my own living expenses from Mark's income, primarily using it to pay off our debt. On top of that, I provided him with a $500 allowance from my own pocket. Despite explaining this to Mark, it appeared he had completely forgotten what the past 23 years had been for. I felt a deep sadness and pitifulness, as if I were drowning in my own tears in that moment. I made the decision to record the conversation and promptly sent the data to my son. Claiming sickness, I left work early and headed to my regular bar, where I drowned my sorrows in alcohol. Pouring out my heart to the bartender, he gently comforted me, saying, "Why do you grieve for someone like that? You've done nothing wrong. There's no need to live for them. Live for yourself." In that moment, my love for my husband and my intoxication faded away. "Thank you, sir. Next time, we'll share a pleasant dream," I said to the bartender before leaving. Returning home, I entered my study and began devising a plan to retrieve the bank book from the safe. I couldn't fathom how to accomplish it, but I was determined to show them hell. They should never underestimate me. Concentrating harder than ever, I knew that gathering evidence was the first step. From that day on, I diligently checked the pet camera every day, and slowly, the ugly truths began to surface. Instead of the woman my husband was having an affair with, my in-laws started appearing on the camera in our house. They were discussing their plan to take the bank book from me. "Is everything arranged to take that bank book from Helen?" they asked, grinning unpleasantly. You're smart. You must have thought of something, right? Yeah, I have a plan. I'm thinking of taking the entire vault. It'll be easy, Mark responded confidently. But the safe is quite heavy. Are you sure you can handle it? His father questioned. I'll be fine. I'll load it onto a cart. Dad, helping out, Mark replied, and his father agreed, saying, All right, I'll assist you any time. The safe weighed around 120 pounds, confirming my suspicion that Mark, despite his good looks, was not very smart. At that moment, I solemnly pledged to drag these people down to the depths of hell. They had not only betrayed me, but also ruined the precious moments I spent watching Luna, our cat. Witnessing my husband's infidelity through the camera was a painful blow. I had hoped to find solace in Luna's presence, but even she seemed scared and wouldn't show up. These people had shattered my peace, but I vowed to punish them severely. One day, while I was working, I activated the pet camera once again. This time, it wasn't the woman my husband was having an affair with. Instead, it was my in-laws at our house, discussing their plan to take the bank book from me. With determination in my heart, I continued to gather evidence, and soon the day would come when I would execute my plan and show them the consequences of underestimating me. Facing the reality of my impending divorce, I found myself strangely accepting of the situation. Just how desperate were these people to go after money? I sat at my office desk, sipping coffee, and recorded the scene on my phone screen. Surprisingly, I wasn't upset or sad anymore. If they had such intentions, so did I. I was determined to show them the consequences of their actions. Then, the day finally arrived. Hey, how much money is in that passbook on the vault? You always seem so happy when you're looking at it, Mark asked. Right now, there's about $500,000 in there, I replied casually. The next day when I arrived home, I discovered a signed divorce paper in the living room. Both my husband and the vault were gone. A smirk formed on my face as I sat down to have breakfast. I acted quickly, immediately filing the divorce papers and contacting my son Kevin. Your father finally stole the vault. Can't believe he managed to carry it. It's so heavy, I told him. Kevin responded, Mom, I think it's about time you end things with Dad. By the way, did he take everything in the vault too? No, actually, I moved all the money to online banking. The passbook is essentially worthless now. The most valuable thing might have been the safe itself since it was so heavy. Oh, by the way, I've already filed the divorce papers. Now I'm thinking about filing a police report. What do you think? I explained to Kevin, who agreed and suggested that I should file a police report and hire a lawyer. Right, a lawyer. I already have a private investigator on it, but I hadn't thought about a lawyer. Thanks, I replied to Kevin. He seemed exasperated. Following Kevin's suggestion, I reached out to a lawyer through my private investigative contact. I handed over the recording from my pet camera to both the police and the lawyer, and then I waited. After a while, I received a call from my ex-husband, sounding quite frantic. What the hell? The passbook is empty. What happened to the $500,000? You tricked me. That was my money. Where is it? Tell me now, or I'm going back to the house and abandoning your cat Luna, he threatened. You just committed theft, and now you're threatening me. From now on, communicate through my lawyer, I calmly responded and blocked his number. I reported the incident to the police and sent the recording to my lawyer. It was a relief to finally take action. This was exactly what I had wanted to do. A short while later, I received a call from the police. We have caught the thief. However, the vault was damaged. It appears he forced it open, and the things inside were burned. They informed me. My ex-husband and his parents learned that the passbook balance was zero, and they set the contents of the vault on fire. Although it was his first offense, my ex-husband spent a few days in custody. Discoveries continued as my ex-husband broke into the house he used to live in after his release. However, I had already filed for a divorce and obtained a restraining order. When he started causing a scene, I called the police, and within 10 minutes, they took him away again. I contacted my lawyer, explained what happened, and had him start the process of getting a restraining order. Furthermore, I asked the lawyer to sue for emotional distress due to his infidelity. The lawyer mentioned that we might not get much money from his broke family, but that didn't really matter to me. What I wanted was alimony. It seems my ex-husband broke into our house because he was discarded by his mistress and wanted to get back with me. His mistress promptly transferred $10,000 as alimony and seemed to have disappeared. It appears they split after the vault incident, realizing that when the money runs out, so does the love. My underpaid ex-husband, who still has $10,000 in debt, and his gambling-addicted parents seem to be struggling with their daily lives. He is living in an old single-room apartment without a bath, constantly quarreling with his parents. This information came from my lawyer. My ex-husband pleaded with me, saying, "I can't afford to pay the alimony. Please reduce the amount." But I refused, telling him to stay away from me. "If you're really sorry, show it with money," I said. If he had stayed with me, he had planned to end the remaining $10,000 of debt by the time he retired. But he fell for the sweet talk of his gambling-addicted parents-in-law. In the end, how foolish they all were. The $500,000 in savings was the accumulation of my hard work since a young age. I find joy in saving small change and updating the bank book. Now I will start a new bank book. I am living a relaxed life with my black cat Luna. My son visits occasionally and tells me about his girlfriend. This time, I am going to spend time for myself. I need to buy a new safe, one that's so big that a person can't carry it. Right, Luna? I am the happiest I've ever been.